The British Free Corps of the Waffen-SS officially came into existence on Hitler's birthday, 1944. The British traitors were now fully paid up members of the German army.
At this stage, they're issued with identity documents, and almost uniquely, one of these has survived. Here it is. It's an SS paybook, which also acts as the personal identity card. And it's issued to Francis McClarty, the Liverpudlian fascist. Here's a photograph of him with the Nazi stamps, and his signature, Frank Wood. Now, all of the British Free Corps were asked to sign on in the unit under false names to protect their identities and to reassure them about what was going to happen at the end of the war. On the next page, we see, after the portrait of the Führer, that his rank is given as SS Unterscharführer, which is corporal. Here's his name again, Frank Wood. It's got the number of his identity discs, his blood group, the size of his gas mask, and the fact that he's a Germanic volunteer. The next page gives his personal details. He's born on the 17th of November 1915 in Lancashire, England. His religion is given as Gottgläubig, which is believer in God, the official Nazi religion. And this shows how committed he was to the Nazi, the fascist cause.
Unterscharführer, or Corporal Frank Wood, was put in charge of propaganda. Dedicated Nazi Thomas Cooper became a sergeant and taught the British traitors to give the Nazi salute. The men under their command were proud of their new uniforms and happily posed for the local photographer. Traditional British drill was allowed by Captain Rupke.
You remember Welsh, you know, standing attention.
But David Greenhoff detests the uniform his father wore.
That's a very potent piece of living history, really, as far as I'm concerned. British, free, Union Jack. When you see it in juxtaposition to that symbol, and you know what that symbol meant, that worries me.
David Greenhoff fears that his father may have committed atrocities serving under the Nazi flag.
I hope and pray that it is so, that they were never involved or never invited to be involved in the acts of terror, the acts of unwanton wickedness that were perpetuated by some people in German uniforms.
But far from committing atrocities, most of the British Free Corps members were simply taking the Nazis for a ride.
John and I received the uniform made to measure, and we done the training, the machine guns and the rifles and that kind of thing, but only to keep out of the way.
Most of them, I think, were in the Free Corps to avoid having to fight at all, to get out of the POW camps, obviously, because it was an unpleasant existence for them, but they had no real intention of going to fight if they could avoid it.
There we were, and we were supposed to be getting ready to go on the Russian front. But at the time I began to think, I don't really want to go any front at all now.
Eric's commander, Captain Rupke, shared his men's reluctance to go into battle.
We're trying to kill time, you know. And I made no move to send them up to the front, and they made no particular, they didn't show any particular desire.
Going to the front was the last thing on the mind of the British Free Corps men. Instead, they made the most of their freedom in the town of Hildesheim, much to the astonishment of local German people. One young boy who saw them, Joachim Dammann, has never forgotten his surprise.
One day, I saw these SS men, but they had the Union Jack up here on their sleeves, and they were speaking English. We were very surprised, because we were supposed to be at war with them. Another time, we were sitting in the barbers, and these two men came in, and they were talking in English as well. We looked at each other, and we thought, what's going on? The barber must have worked in England, and he wanted to call the police. He wanted to call the Gestapo, because he thought they were spies.
With most of their men away at the Eastern Front, the women of Hildesheim welcomed the new arrivals. The height of fashion for Hildesheim girls was a British SS boyfriend. And the place to be was the Café Corso, where the British Free Corps men spent their evenings. One romance that blossomed there is still a vivid memory for Elfriede Kuntje. For 58 years she's kept in her heart the secret of a love affair that crossed the bloody battle lines of World War II. Aged just 18, she fell in love with a British Free Corps soldier.
He came up to my table and he said, "Good evening, Fräulein." And then after that he came to my flat every night. He was tall, handsome, charming and courteous. A real English gentleman. We were in love, really in love, inseparable.
Elfriede knew her lover as Robert Kingsley, but his real name was Hugh Wilson Cowie, a private from the Gordon Highlanders captured in France and blackmailed into joining the British Free Corps. We showed Elfriede a British Free Corps uniform, like the one her lover used to wear.
Robert hatte nur hier noch ein Zeichen. Die britischen Löwen.
The British Lion.
Dass ich das noch mal wiedersehe.
I never thought I would see this again.
Sowas geht doch nicht weg.
It never goes away.
Sonst hätte ich mir ja nicht das Bild so
Why else would I have kept his photograph all these years?
Wie ich in England war, das ist...
I went to England 3 years ago, and while I was there I thought about him a lot.
Ich habe öfter an ihn gedacht.
Sadly, we had to tell Elfriede that Robert was dead.
Wenn das geht?
If it's possible, I'll go over to England.
75. Dann kann ich sein Grab vielleicht finden.
And maybe I can find his grave.
Oh weia.
Oh God.